Karen stood at her kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone as the sun streamed in through the window. The idea struck her like a bolt of lightning. Why not host a massive pool party at the nearby farm lake? After all, it was a hot summer day, and the thought of splashing around with friends was too enticing to resist. Feeling a rush of entitlement, she convinced herself that since the lake was nearby, it was fair game for her and the other members of the homeowners association. With a spark of excitement, Karen quickly typed out a group message inviting everyone in the HOA. Join me for an epic pool party at the lake this Saturday. Bring your floats and snacks. She could already envision the scene, laughter echoing across the water, music blasting from speakers, and everyone lounging on colorful floats under the sun. It was going to be a perfect day, or so she thought. As Saturday approached, Karen turned her enthusiasm into action. She gathered an assortment of pool floats, snacks, and drinks, loading them into her car with a sense of glee. When she arrived at the lake, she was met by a crowd of eager neighbors ready to join in on the fun. They set up lounge chairs along the water's edge, unpacked their picnic baskets filled with chips and dips, and cranked up the music. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement. However, there was one critical detail none of them considered. They were on private property. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Karen and her friends, the farmer who owned the lake was watching their antics unfold from afar. Rather than confronting them outright, which could lead to an awkward confrontation or even hostility, he decided to take a different approach. He had dealt with trespassers before and knew how to teach a lesson without raising alarms. As Karen basked in the glory of her impromptu celebration, little did she know that complications were brewing just beneath the surface of her perfect day. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Karen and her fellow HOA members set to work transforming the lakeside into a festive paradise. Excitement buzzed among them as they unloaded their cars, each filled with brightly colored floats, coolers packed with snacks, and a portable sound system that promised to bring life to the party. The group worked enthusiastically, arranging lounge chairs in a semicircle facing the shimmering water. Laughter mingled with the sounds of rustling bags and clinking bottles as they shared stories and jokes while setting up. Karen directed the show, ensuring everything was just right for their grand day of fun. The music soon filled the air, creating an inviting atmosphere that beckoned anyone nearby to join in on the celebration. They spread out platters of chips, dips, and refreshing drinks on picnic blankets, creating a colorful spread that added to the lively ambience. Children darted around, splashing water while adults lounged on floats, sipping cold beverages and soaking up the sun. The laughter was infectious, echoing across the lake as they reveled in their carefree day. Oblivious to the fact that they were trespassing on private property, the group continued their festivities with unbridled joy. Each member was too caught up in the moment to notice any signs indicating ownership or restrictions. The thought never crossed their minds that they needed permission. After all, it was just a lake. As time passed, Karen felt a sense of pride wash over her. This was her party, her idea, and it was turning out perfectly. The music pulsed through the air, and she couldn't help but dance along with her friends, lost in the moment. Little did they know that their perfect day was about to take an unexpected turn. While laughter filled the air and everyone enjoyed themselves, the farmer continued watching from a distance. He shook his head at their naivety, but remained patient. With a plan forming in his mind, he prepared to execute a subtle lesson that would soon disrupt their carefree celebration without them even realizing what was happening until it was too late. From a distance, the farmer watched as the colorful scene unfolded at his lake. He leaned against a weathered fence post, arms crossed, shaking his head slightly at the sight of Karen and her friends enjoying themselves without a care in the world. The laughter and music floated through the air, but instead of feeling anger, he felt a sense of amusement mixed with determination. He had dealt with trespassers before, and this time he was ready to teach them a lesson without raising any alarms. The farmer was not one to confront people directly. He preferred to handle matters with a clever approach. He understood that simply asking them to leave could lead to confrontation and negativity. Instead, he formulated a plan that would allow him to reclaim his property while also reminding the partygoers of their mistake in a way that would leave a lasting impression. Quietly, he made his way back to his barn, where he kept a stash of pool floats for his own family's enjoyment. As he rummaged through them, an idea struck him. He would replace their bright, cheerful floats with ones that had tiny, unnoticeable leaks. This would create just enough trouble without them realizing what was happening until it was too late. With stealth and precision, he approached the lakeside under the cover of trees. He carefully swapped out the partygoers' floats for his modified ones, ensuring they looked identical at first glance. Satisfied with his handiwork, he retreated back to his vantage point, ready to observe how the situation would unfold. As he stood there, he couldn't help but chuckle softly at the thought of what was to come. He imagined Karen's face when she realized that her grand party was about to take an unexpected turn. The farmer knew that sometimes people needed a little reminder about respecting boundaries, and today he would provide just that. With a mix of anticipation and amusement, he settled in to watch the festivities continue while the seeds of his plan began to take root. The sun shimmered on the lake's surface as laughter echoed around him, unaware that their fun was about to take a surprising twist. With the sun shining brightly overhead, the party at the lake was in full swing. Music blared from speakers, and laughter echoed across the water as Karen and her friends floated blissfully on their colorful inflatables. What they didn't realize was that the farmer had quietly set his plan in motion. Under the cover of trees, he had swapped out their vibrant floats for his own, ones equipped with tiny, undetectable leaks. Each float looked just as inviting and cheerful as the original, ensuring that no one would suspect a thing. The farmer took pride in his handiwork, knowing that soon enough, the truth would reveal itself in a way no one would forget. As time passed, guests continued to lounge on their floats, sipping drinks and enjoying snacks. The atmosphere was carefree and celebratory, with no hint of the trouble lurking beneath the surface. The farmer observed from a distance, suppressing a grin as he watched people bobbing up and down on the water. Gradually, however, the first signs of trouble began to emerge. A few partygoers shifted their weight on their floats, only to feel an unsettling slouching sensation. They glanced around in confusion, but dismissed it as nothing more than a momentary imbalance. Meanwhile, the farmer stood by, pleased that his plan was unfolding just as he had envisioned. One by one, guests started to notice that their floats were losing buoyancy. The laughter turned to puzzled murmurs as they fidgeted uncomfortably on their sinking inflatables. "Is it just me?" one person called out, shifting awkwardly as their float began to dip lower into the water. Innocently unaware of any sabotage, Karen reassured her friends that they were just being silly. Yet it didn't take long for panic to set in when more floats visibly sank beneath their occupants' weight. Suddenly, splashes erupted as people scrambled to regain balance or leap off their failing floats. The farmer watched with satisfaction as chaos began to unfold at the lakeside party. His subtle sabotage was proving effective, and he knew that soon enough, Karen and her friends would have a memorable story to tell, one that came with a valuable lesson about respecting boundaries and property rights. As the sun blazed in the sky, the lively atmosphere around the lake was filled with laughter and upbeat music. Karen and her friends floated happily, blissfully unaware that their fun was about to take a turn. The soothing sounds of summer mixed with occasional splashes created an idyllic scene, until one by one, partygoers began to notice something peculiar. It started subtly. A woman floated lazily, sipping her drink when she felt a slight dip beneath her. She shrugged it off at first, thinking it might be her imagination or perhaps just an uneven distribution of weight. But as she adjusted her position, she felt the float sink a little more. Confused, she glanced at her friend nearby. "Hey, do you feel like we're sinking?" she asked, chuckling nervously. Her friend shrugged, laughing it off as part of the fun. "Maybe we just need to shift our weight," he said with a grin. However, as more guests began to shift positions on their floats, the situation grew increasingly comical. A group of kids squealed with laughter as they splashed water at each other from their inflatables, but soon they realized their own floats were losing air. One float began to tilt dangerously to one side, causing its occupant to slide into the water with an exaggerated splash. "What's going on?" someone shouted amid fits of laughter. "Are these floats supposed to be this wobbly?" With each passing moment, more people began to feel the effects of the sinking floats. Some even started bobbing up and down as they attempted to balance themselves, their laughter mingling with shouts of surprise. The realization dawned slowly, but comically. They were indeed sinking. As the buoyancy continued to diminish, giggles turned into playful panic. Guests began jumping off their floats into the water, splashing about in a frenzy to escape their failing inflatables. "I think we're all going down," someone yelled dramatically, eliciting uproarious laughter from those still precariously perched on their sinking toys. The scene transformed into an unintentional comedy show as partygoers scrambled for stability while trying not to fall into the lake. Each moment brought more hilarity as they tried to maintain their composure amid the chaos. Little did they know that this humorous realization was just the beginning of their unexpected adventure at the lake. As laughter filled the air, the mood began to shift from playful amusement to sudden alarm. With more guests realizing their floats were not only tilting but now fully submerging, panic started to ripple through the gathering. What had been a carefree day of fun quickly morphed into chaos as partygoers found themselves unexpectedly plunged into the chilly lake. The first signs of true panic emerged when a group of friends, once comfortably lounging, suddenly felt their floats give way beneath them. Sharply gasping, they scrambled to stay afloat as they dropped into the water. Their surprised squeals echoed across the lake, triggering a wave of realization among others that it wasn't just a few isolated incidents anymore. "Get to shore! Get to shore!" someone shouted, and with that, the atmosphere exploded into frantic movement. Bodies splashed everywhere as laughter turned into shouts of urgency. Guests who had been floating moments before were now thrashing in the water, trying to regain their footing or reach the safety of land. In the midst of the commotion, Karen attempted to rally her friends. "Everyone, let's get back," she yelled, her voice rising above the cacophony. But in her urgency, she found herself caught off guard as her own float began to sink beneath her. She stumbled awkwardly and fell into the lake with a splash that sent waves crashing against nearby loungers. The scene intensified as more people toppled from their floats or leaped off in desperation. Some guests struggled to swim while still trying to rescue their sinking inflatables, causing further chaos as they collided with each other amidst the confusion. Laughter was replaced by yelps and frantic splashes as everyone raced toward the shore, drenched and bewildered. "Help! I can't swim," one person called out, prompting a few brave souls to dive back into the water and assist those who were struggling. The camaraderie forged in that moment was overshadowed by the absurdity of their predicament, each person grappling with both embarrassment and laughter at how quickly their party had devolved into a scene reminiscent of a slapstick comedy. As feet finally touched solid ground, soaked and panting, they looked around at one another, realizing the hilarity of it all, though the humor was tinged with lingering embarrassment about how everything had spiraled out of control so quickly. It was a day they wouldn't soon forget, but not for the reasons Karen had anticipated when she planned this gathering. As the chaos of the sinking floats settled into an uneasy calm, the aftermath left a mix of laughter and embarrassment hanging in the air. Soaked to the bone, Karen stood on the shore, her frustration bubbling beneath the surface. She watched her friends shake off water and share incredulous looks, each one processing the absurdity of what had just occurred. But instead of accepting responsibility for their trespass, Karen's mind raced to find someone to blame. "I can't believe this happened," she exclaimed, turning to her friends, who were still trying to regain their composure. "This has to be the farmer's doing. He must have sabotaged our floats." Her voice rose above the chatter as she pointed toward the distant figure of the farmer, who had remained largely unnoticed during the chaos. The sight of him standing quietly by his barn only fueled her indignation. "He's been watching us this whole time. You know, he doesn't want anyone here." A few eyebrows raised among the group, but most shrugged her off. They were more focused on drying off and sharing laughs about their unexpected plunge. "Come on, Karen," one friend said, still chuckling as he wrung out his shirt. We signed up for this lake party without permission. It's kind of on us. Karen's denial only grew stronger amidst their skepticism. No way. It doesn't make sense that all our floats would sink like that without some kind of interference. He did this on purpose, she insisted, crossing her arms defiantly. But as she looked around at her friend's skeptical expressions, doubt crept into her mind. There was no evidence to support her accusations. No one else had witnessed any hostile actions from the farmer. They had simply enjoyed a day that had spiraled out of control due to their own overconfidence and lack of regard for property boundaries. Frustrated but aware that her claims were falling flat, Karen felt a mix of anger and embarrassment wash over her. She wanted someone to blame for ruining what she envisioned as a perfect day at the lake, but it was clear that her friends were far more interested in laughing off their mishap than entertaining her conspiracy theories. Realizing she was losing ground in her defense, Karen huffed quietly to herself, plotting how she could make sense of this chaotic day, if not through blame, then perhaps by finding a way to reclaim some semblance of dignity after their wild afternoon at the lake. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the lake, the mood among the HOA members shifted from chaotic laughter to a heavy sense of embarrassment. Drenched from head to toe, they stood on the shore, their once vibrant party now reduced to a memory of splashes and frantic scrambling. Karen attempted to regain her composure, but the weight of humiliation was palpable. She looked around at her friends, their hair plastered to their foreheads, clothes clinging uncomfortably as they exchanged sheepish glances. The buoyant atmosphere they had created just hours earlier had faded, replaced by a collective realization that their day of fun had spiraled into an unexpected disaster. "Let's just get out of here," one member suggested, wiping water from his brow and glancing nervously toward the farmer's barn. "I don't think we should stick around any longer." Nods of agreement rippled through the group as they started gathering their belongings. Still soggy lounge chairs, half-eaten snacks, and remnants of their failed pool party. Each item felt like a reminder of their poor judgment in trespassing on private property. Conversations dwindled to murmurs as they packed up in silence, each person lost in thoughts about how things had gone so wrong. Karen's earlier bravado had evaporated along with the joyful spirit of the afternoon. As she folded a wet towel, she couldn't help but replay the day's events in her mind. While she had envisioned a carefree gathering by the lake, what unfolded was a lesson in humility and consequence. As they trudged back to their cars, soaked and embarrassed, one member turned to Karen and said, "Next time, let's make sure we have permission before showing up somewhere." The comment hung in the air, a stark reminder that entitlement could lead to unexpected repercussions. With heads held low and laughter now replaced by reflective sighs, they drove away from the lake. Each member silently vowed not only to remember this day, but also to respect boundaries in the future. Karen glanced back one last time at the lake as it receded in the distance. It would forever be etched in her memory as a cautionary tale about overstepping one's bounds, and a reminder that sometimes fun comes with unforeseen consequences. After the chaotic pool party and the hasty retreat of Karen and her friends, the farmer stood by the edge of the lake, a satisfied smile creeping across his face. He had successfully reclaimed his property without confrontation and taught the trespassers a valuable lesson about respect and boundaries. Yet, he felt there was one final touch needed to ensure they thought twice before considering another unauthorized visit. The next day, armed with a set of bright yellow signs, the farmer set out to create a humorous yet effective deterrent. He knew that simply putting up "no trespassing" signs wouldn't carry the same weight. He wanted something that would catch their attention and spark their imaginations. After some deliberation, he decided to go for a more creative approach. As he staked the first sign into the ground near the water's edge, he chuckled to himself. The sign read, "Beware of snakes," with a cartoonish snake slithering across it, its tongue flicking in an exaggerated manner. He continued to place several more signs around the perimeter of the lake, each one positioned strategically to maximize visibility. The farmer envisioned Karen and her friends returning one day, eager for another day of fun, only to be met with these comical warnings. He imagined their expressions upon reading the signs, first disbelief, then laughter, followed by a healthy dose of apprehension. It was the perfect blend of humor and caution, ensuring they would think twice before even considering trespassing again. Once completed, he stepped back to admire his handiwork. The bright yellow sign stood out against the backdrop of lush greenery and sparkling blue water, sending a clear message that this lake was off-limits. Satisfied with his work, he returned to his barn, confident that his plan would succeed. As days turned into weeks, word spread among the HOA members about the new signs at the lake. Karen and her friends couldn't help but chuckle nervously when they heard about them. The image of snakes lurking near their former party spot instilled an undeniable sense of caution in them. This unexpected twist ensured that any thoughts of returning were quickly dismissed. With a grin on his face, the farmer knew he had successfully protected his land while also providing a humorous reminder of what happens when boundaries are crossed. His method may have been unconventional, but it had undoubtedly left an indelible mark on Karen and her friends and helped maintain peace at his beloved lake. As the sun set over the lake, casting warm hues across the water, the events of the day lingered in the air like an unspoken lesson. The story of Karen and her friends had unfolded as a humorous yet poignant reminder of the importance of respecting boundaries and private property. What began as a carefree party had spiraled into chaos, leaving them not just soaked but also humbled. Karen had entered that day with a sense of entitlement, believing she could claim the beautiful lake as her own playground without seeking permission. Her actions had led her and her friends into a situation that was not only embarrassing but also enlightening. The farmer's clever response to their trespass had turned their day of fun into a lasting memory filled with laughter and a healthy dose of humility. In the aftermath, the bright yellow signs proclaiming "Beware of snakes" served as more than just a warning. They became a symbol of accountability. They reminded everyone that actions have consequences, especially when one chooses to overlook the rights of others. Karen and her friends would now think twice before assuming they could freely use someone else's property without consent. This tale underscored a vital truth. Entitlement can blind individuals to the impact of their choices. When people disregard boundaries, they risk facing unexpected repercussions that can shift their perspectives entirely. The farmer's clever tactics ensured that his land remained undisturbed while imparting a lesson that transcended mere amusement. As time passed, Karen and her fellow HOA members learned to approach future gatherings with greater respect for privacy and ownership. They shared stories about their lake escapade, often laughing about it, but also reflecting on how it had shaped their understanding of community and respect. In essence, justice was served not through confrontation, but through creativity and patience. The farmer's thoughtful method left an indelible mark on Karen and her friends, ensuring they would remember their experience whenever they considered hosting an event in the future. As twilight enveloped the lake, it was clear that this story would be recounted for years to come, not just for its humor, but for its underlying message about respect, responsibility, and the unexpected lessons learned from crossing boundaries.